Welcome to The Wyrd Way, a podcast about magic, folklore, healing, and everything in between. I'm your host, Sharon Ruedeman, and your guide if you choose to follow The Wyrd Way. Hello and welcome to the very first episode of The Wyrd Way. I am really excited to get this project underway. It's been kind of living in my brain for a little while, and so I'm excited to get it out of my brain and into the world. So what is The Wyrd Way? Who am I? We're going to cover all of that in this first episode, which is just sort of an intro to everything and what this podcast is about. Who am I? Who's hosting it? And what you can expect, at least as far as I can tell so far. So who am I, first of all? I'm Sharon. I'm a witch, a seer, a creative worker. I've been working in and as a video artist for, I don't know, like almost 17 years. A storyteller. I'm a teacher, a space holder, cat mom, Libra, tarot reader. I offer one-on-ones with people for tarot, Reiki, breathwork. I teach workshops like the morning ritual. I teach tarot salon. Basically just teach people how to use their own intuition and heal themselves and how to reconnect. Things that I've picked up along my way in my journey of recovering from childhood trauma, adult trauma. Maybe I'll go into those stories later, probably. They'll definitely come up. But mostly this is about reclaiming and finding your own path. I think maybe one of the main components to my work and everything that I do is showing others, guiding others to find their own way. All of these things, why am I telling them to you? Because I'm probably going to talk about them in some way or some form during this podcast. I wanted to create The Wyrd Way as a way to share what I'm learning, as a way to share and, you know, why anybody shares stories is a way of connecting. I wanted to create a free resource. I really like teaching. I really like channeling and sharing those messages that I get. And I also wanted to sort of continue where Wild Women Healers left off. So if you've been following me for a while on YouTube or on Instagram at Wild Women Healers, you know that I put a lot of work into that documentary series, which if you haven't watched it, please Google it, find it on YouTube. It's I think very relevant for people who are just beginning on their paths, who are seeking, who are unsure. It's got 2 seasons of different stories of different people who have answered like a calling, have answered, a calling to help others, a calling to engage with magic, to work with spirit, and to help other people do the same. Yeah, I wanted to create this podcast to sort of continue Wild Women Healers, but I also was ready to move on from that title, from that name. Wild Women Healers was sort of a really big milestone and a really big catalyst for kind of where I am now. I don't think without that journey, I wouldn't really be here. Not in the same capacity at all. I learned a lot about myself. I learned a lot about my abilities and talents. And I learned a lot about just following my intuition, because that project was all intuition. I had no idea why, but I had to create it. And so I sort of felt the same way. I knew I wanted to start sharing again. I had tried a few times by doing like Wild Women Healers Live, but I never really like stuck to it. I had moved to Santa Fe, and like 2 years ago, I was recovering from like a lot of stuff. I was recovering from living in New York. And don't get me wrong, I love New York City. I will always be a New Yorker. That is where I was born and raised. I just couldn't live there anymore. It was making me sick. And I was also sick from trauma, from, probably should put like a trigger warning on this word, but from an abusive relationship. I'm not going to go into super details though, so don't worry. I was recovering from just all kinds of things, and kind of got stuck in New York City for a little bit during COVID, and then finally was able to make the move out here to the desert, and and then I got like completely ill. And I think, you know, in retrospect, now that I'm kind of almost out of it, still healing, but almost out of it, I could see that first of all, like, very New Yorker style, got to Santa Fe and like tried to do like all the things. I tried to start dating, I tried to start a business, I tried to start just everything, and then I like crashed and burned. And so that is why Wild Women Healers Live sort of just stopped. I ran out of energy and I really had to focus on my health. And so I did that for the last 2 years, basically. I've been focusing solely on getting better. I'm still getting better. And in the meantime, I also was really working on learning to trust myself again, because after that relationship, I had a lot of fear and I had a lot of doubt, and I had just a lot of confusion about like what the hell I was doing. And from different classes, from just different explorations, and mostly just getting in touch with my own, with myself, with my magic, with my craft, I have found my strength again. I have found myself again. And I kind of wanted to make this podcast in a way to share that, because I know there's others like me out there who maybe are in the midst of struggle. Maybe they're in the midst of just working with the healing journey. It really doesn't matter where you are in your path, whether you've been on it for decades or days. I think that you'll find something helpful. Even if you don't recognize yourself as an intuitive or a witch or particularly spiritual, I still think that you might find something helpful in this podcast, because what we're really going to be focusing on, besides the path and the healing journey, is also stories and folklore and mythology, and how those old stories can really, well, in a way, we're just kind of, you know, rediscovering these old stories, but also seeing how they can help us in a modern way, because they're all still really relevant, and they're all basically founded within humanness. You know, one of the major inspirations for when I was doing Wild Women Healers was the book The Women Who Ran with the Wolves, which I still turn to every once in a while. And so if there's anybody out there who's looking for some guidance around storytelling, myths, I mean, she's like, Dr. Estes is like the queen of that. I would love to take one of her classes one day. But that's how I got into this a little bit. I was also already a storyteller in my work. I've been a video editor, video producer for my entire adult life. I still am, but now I'm doing it through my own company, Video Magic. Yep, little promo there for myself. If you're looking for video work, look up Video Magic. I love to help people make intuitively designed videos, but enough about me. Anyway, I don't want to get off topic here. I wanted to not only explore storytelling, but also the stories from my own ancestry. And now I'm a person who's not very connected to my ancestors. I've been getting reconnected. And it's been actually pretty hard because there's no one around for me to really ask. My dad is here. I can ask him some stuff, but he's, he doesn't have all the info. And I don't really have a connection to like a lineage or what have you. So it's been a lot of work in the spirit world, connecting with ancestors who I don't really know who they are or had to discover who they are. They came to me during like breath work training. They came to me during meditations. The more I dug, the more they, arrived and started showing me things. And I'm still doing that. I'm still working with that. I'm doing a really cool course right now with Sacred Familiar. It's a doll making course. It's all about shadow work and getting in touch with these archetypes. And it's just exactly the kind of stuff that I'm into. And it's like these old stories are what we're all made of. And I think that they can be really helpful still. So basically, this is how it's going to work. I'm going to probably do like a monthly episode where I just kind of wax philosophic about the month that's coming up. I do this in my newsletter, and I think that this would be like another way to get that info I think you just get a little bit more in depth when you're able to talk and chat, and I'm an air sign, so anyway, that's kind of how it's going to work. I'll have like these monthly episodes, and they'll basically be like 2 episodes a month, so like monthly recap and then a storytelling folktale focus 2 weeks later in the middle of the month. So that's my intro. That's all I've got for now, and I didn't want to take up too much time if you haven't skipped ahead already. The next part that we're going to jump into is the monthly tarot reading. So your monthly tarot reading. And it will always come out towards the beginning of the month, always intuitively channeled for the collective. And I think it's going to be a lot of fun. So without further ado, the tarot card I pulled for the month of October is the Queen of Swords. Now, the Queen of Swords, I think, is here to suggest as best as you can this month. Choose how you spend your energy. Choose how you use your words. Choose how you listen. Do more listening than speaking this month. And also do not feel guilty if you need to cancel plans, if you need to reschedule or tell somebody no. The Queen of Wands does not feel bad for saying no. In fact, the Queen of Wands reminds us that if it's not a hell yes, if it's bringing you stress more than it's bringing you uplift, it's probably a no. I think that the Queen of Swords is here to help us make a few decisions because it is Libra season at the beginning of the month, and then we move into Scorpio season, into death. But right now we are in justice, according to the tarot. We are in the scales, Libra, Aries. It's a very sociable season. It's also a very busy time of the year. Everybody I know is like running around, overworked, overtired. Where can you like fit in a nap? Where can you carve out some space? The Queen of Swords wants us to not only say no to the thing that just is like not bringing you joy, but also to use that time to get in touch with your intuition. Because the Queen of Swords is a queen. All the queens are all about intuition. I think that this queen is very much about finding your own path, doing things according to your intuition that maybe doesn't make sense to a lot of people, and using your sword of truth. The Queen of Swords, she's holding up an upright sword. Use that sword to cut through the noise. Use that sword to cut through the noise in your brain, cut through the noise, social media, the news. Don't get off of it for a little bit. If it's bringing you doom and gloom, if anything is bringing your brain into black and white thinking. I wrote about this in my newsletter this month, actually. The both and of things. I think that's really what Justice Season was, one of the big messages of this time period, besides being in the moment, being with what is. The Queen of Swords is very strongly related to Libra. I wasn't surprised when she popped up. I'm also really excited that is the first card that I pulled for the Wyrd Way, because that is one of the major ideas behind this podcast, is to help people. I mean, it's actually one of the main ideas that behind everything that I do, is to help people find their own way. I don't think that people, while your path may look similar, your experience may be similar to somebody else. Nobody's path is the same as somebody else's. Everyone has their own way to go. Everyone incarnated into this life for some lesson to learn. And so while you may be inspired by other people, you may share things with other people, in the end, at the end of the day, it's up to you, right, to choose and to find your way. And so that's a really big idea behind a lot of my offerings, is to help people, guide people into finding their true path, to finding what works for them and what doesn't. In fact, I'm teaching a class, a little plug. I'm teaching a class about that, coming up actually real soon in the middle of this month. And the doors for enrollment are open now for the morning ritual, how to create and stick to your own personal practice. And so it's not just a meditation class. It's not just another, this is how to meditate. You will learn a lot of tools like breath work and different mindfulness techniques and divination and etc. But the main gist is to find something that works for you, and so that you will continue to come back to it and work on it and develop it as you go along. And so, if you're interested in that, it's on my website, Wild Women Healers. It's on my Instagram. All these things will be in the, show notes and stuff. Anyway, back to the Queen of Wands. So, that is the main message for October. If you choose to accept it, the Queen of Wands, I think, is here to help us, guide us through the month in a way that is truly, truly authentic to you, to your values. And also, she's very much in line with truth. And so I think that there is also another message here about tuning out the noise, cutting through, using your sword to get to the truth of what's going on. because that is also a big message in justice season. And the High Priestess is the second card I pulled, because it's very much in support of finding that. Now, the High Priestess is here to remind us that we're all intuitive, right? So I said earlier that the Queen of Swords wants us to tune out the noise so that we may tune in to our intuitive selves, our truest selves. Some people may claim that they're not intuitive, and I would have to argue that maybe you just haven't discovered the way that your intuition works yet, because everybody has everyone has guides, everyone has intuition. Talk to anybody, any modern witch, any space holder out there. If they're not suggesting that you have your own intuition, then I would suggest questioning that, because everybody has access to an inner guidance system. To even if you don't know your ancestors, like myself, like you can figure out how to communicate with them in some way. And there's lots of resources out there in 2023 to get in touch with that. So the High Priestess is showing up to remind us all that you are intuitive, that even if you haven't figured out, maybe now is the time when you actually do start to realize that maybe in these moments of taking time for yourself, you're also taking time to connect with your guides. I'd say for a lot of people that are starting off on the path, a lot of times it just happens with like coincidences, as far as starting off with intuition. A lot of people start to see numbers, that correspond. A lot of people, will get like feathers. I still get excited when I find a feather because it feels very much like, especially if you're struggling to make a decision or you're struggling to hear the guidance or feel into the guidance. I think that guides will reach out to you in these like physical manifestations a lot of times in order to just kind of like give you a thumbs up, like, hey, I'm here, I'm listening, you're on the right path. It's important to realize or notice what you were thinking about when you see these things. Of course, there's a tendency to go, I think, a little overboard. I had this acquaintance back in the day who used to like text me all the time. Okay, there wasn't an acquaintance, they're an ex-friend. They used to text me all the time at 11:11. And to be honest, after a while, it was a little annoying because that happens twice a day. And so after a while, like some people will go as far as to like put an alarm on their phone. I mean, that's cool, whatever floats your boat. I'm not here to make fun of people. I have to actually catch myself because it is Libra, so I am a Libra. There is a judgment to the tone in the air sometimes. But I think that if you're noticing those things, pay attention. But don't get, stuck in it. Don't get like obsessed, because that is sort of the other side of the coin here, right? When you're learning to work with your intuition, it can be, kind of quiet. It's a muscle. It's a practice. It's learning how your intuition speaks to you. Everybody has their own way that their intuition speaks to them. And some people have multiple ways, and some people it starts off in a certain way, and it's always changing and it's always developing. And I think one of the biggest opportunities this month is to work with that. Because I think that we're in a chariot year. There are some like really big changes happening. Whether you choose to accept them or not is up to you. But I think that we're coming towards the end of the year. We're coming towards the end of this chariot lesson. And so I think that now is the time to truly start to reflect on what can I make change? How can I make change in my life to take it into the next season, to take it into the next year, to take it into the next 5 years? How can I change the way that I show up for work? How can I change the way that I show up for myself? How can I change into a better, more productive, intuitive way? For me, it's doing this podcast. It's around the way that I'm working. I started out the year with a full-time job, and literally like a week later didn't have one. And there was a lot of emotions there, but I was pretty much excited because I needed that push to get rolling again. I needed that push to examine the way that I had been becoming like a rather miserable corporate drone. And TV, it's a hard industry. That's the one I've worked in for all of my career. And there's some bittersweet change, of course, but ultimately I'm not leaving video behind. I am leaving corporate media behind. And of course, right away I found myself applying to just another full-time big media corporation job. And then I had to catch myself a lot through this year. I'm still working through it, but I'm trying to relearn the way that I show up for work and how I make money. And it's been interesting. It's been an interesting adventure. But mostly I've been trying to follow my intuition, channel my creative processes. I did and still am doing the Clear Channels workshop with the Moon Studio. And it's been an amazing adventure, just getting better at channeling, getting better at understanding what my intuition, how it works, how it shows me stuff. And yeah, that's a big part of this podcast, is that it's completely channeled, it's completely intuitive. And sometimes things happen. Like I thought I was going to re-record my little intro, and like it wouldn't come out right. And I was just like, I had to like feel into what was going on, and I think my guys were just saying, you have it, don't re-record it. So anyway, yeah, I think that this month is prime for these kinds of opportunities, but it's also this year. It's learning and relearning the ways that we show up and the ways that we move through. And I think that the reading is emphasizing like now is the time, even if you're just starting out, to really practice, to start practicing your guidance system, start working with it. And if you're already doing that, perhaps trying to take that a step further into more parts of your life. Our guide for the month is Justice Reversed. And, normally I would have taken Justice out because we're in a Justice season, like that's what we're in. But, again, I didn't necessarily feel, I was like, oh, Justice isn't going to come up. But then it did. They're showing up reversed because I think that they're, in Libra season, there can be a tendency for gossip. There can be a tendency for, and all these changes are happening and people are losing their jobs or losing their health insurance or losing their homes or whatever's happening because the world is crazy. There's a tendency to wallow. And by all means, you have a right to do that. If you're certainly like finding yourself suddenly like facing the end of the year without steady income, like my heart goes out to you. I was just there. I am there now. But there's an opportunity not to like become some kind of like Pollyanna, like, yes, it's about divine timing, and yes, it's about like things are happening for you, but also like, yeah, recognize that this is a shitty situation or it's something that you didn't choose, and that it also totally sucks, but don't get stuck there, right? Like, don't get stuck in the complaining, in the like, go have your fit or whatever it is that you need to do. Acknowledge that, there were two sides of what happened. There were two sides, there were two parts in this play. There was me, and then there was the other person, or there was me, and then there was the world. There was, it's all about duality, that this season is about balance, of course, and it's about justice and fairness. And when justice is reversed, is often there's feelings that things weren't fair, and you know what? Probably not. It's probably not fair. But it's also what's happening. And getting stuck in how unfair it is also unfair to you. It'll keep you stuck. And it might keep you applying to the same old job, applying to the same old relationship, going out with the same kinds of people. And I think that there's an opportunity to make really big changes right now. And maybe it starts with your Queen of Swords and saying, no, that's not for me. No, I don't want to do that anymore. No, I got to think about this for a second. That was a really big one for me. When I started to really understand the Queen of Swords, because I knew that everyone interpreted her with like this, she was like the queen of no. And as a Libra and a people pleaser, I really couldn't relate. I would often say yes to things and then regret them later, or take on too much, or say I would help somebody and then feel resentful. Or during this time period, when I was really getting to know the Queen of Swords, and I still am, she's still a little mysterious. I was joking it was my sacred maybe, because instead of saying yes all the time, I was giving myself that moment of pause to think and to tune in and to really ask myself, do you want to do this thing? Do you have the ability? Do you have the energy? Do you have the resources to do this thing? Even if it sounds fun right now, think about what, and so that helped me to start to make better decisions, which we all need in Libra season. Also, maybe a decision doesn't have to be made right now, right? Like, I think that's also a really beautiful message in the Queen of Swords, is that in saying no, she's also saying not right now. So I think the major opportunity for October, and at least for until we reach Scorpio season, which is a whole can of different worms, the opportunity right now is to really take these moments of opportunity to practice, to listen, to find our guidance system, and just to really embody the message of the year of change, of different ways of moving around, of different ways of showing up. And then I pulled a little helper card because it didn't feel fully complete. And so the Empress, she showed up in what kind of would help to open up to this lesson. And the Empress is, she's in one with nature. She is very intuitive with her body, related to the Queen of Pentacles a little bit. But she's also all about receiving. She's about how we allow others to, it's about right relationship, really. And the opportunity is to look at nature, which I guess is sort of setting us up for Scorpio season, right? Because nature shows us the life cycles of like a tree, and the leaves are beautiful and green. They blossom in the spring, and they're just like blooming and gorgeous in the summer. And then in the fall, they let go and they die and they wither and they fertilize the soil for the next season. And then they go to sleep in the winter. And then we do it all over again in the spring. And that is a really big lesson. And we'll go more into it next month because we'll still be in Scorpio season. But I think that sometimes it's easier to learn how to let go than it is to receive. Because it's not about holding on, and it's not about, sometimes it is about asking for help, but also it's about how do we receive news? How do we receive compliments? How do we receive offerings of help? How do we receive love? How do we receive money? How do we receive ourselves, our messages? And I think that is why the Empress is here to say, how can you get yourself into a little bit more comfort and being a little bit more patient so that you can maybe get a little bit more quiet or still or in the flow so that you may receive these messages. Yeah, that feels right. I think this is such a beautiful message coming through for this podcast, for this beginning, for this season. If you're listening to it like months or years from now, cool. I think probably you'll still get something out of it. But for right now, especially in October, as we're moving into eclipse season and all that jazz, and we're heading into the holidays, and we're heading into like such the stupidest, busiest time of the year, how can you allow yourself space to listen and receive so that you may make informed and empowered decisions and not care how that looks to anybody else? That's the hardest part, I think, sometimes. When you are starting to listen to your guides and listen to your intuition, is that a lot of it feels really weird at first. Like, I remember listening to, or maybe I was taking one of Lindsay Mack's courses. This was like early 2020. And yeah, I think it was like an inner guidance course, or maybe it was her podcast. I don't know. She says it a lot. If, like, when you first start listening to your intuition, you lose stuff. You lose people. You lose friends. You lose, people kind of are like, what are you doing? And you're like, hell if I know. I'm just like following the arrows. And you might look a little like, whoa, out there to people. And it's okay if it doesn't make sense to anybody else. All it has to do is kind of make sense to you. And it might be a little bit scary. It's definitely going to be scary. But it's so worth it. It is so worth it to take these moments, to take these breaks, to take the lesson of this season, which I never would have thought of for Libra season. But it makes sense. I mean, underneath it all, I always like to look at what was at the bottom of the deck. And it was 3 of Cups. And that's that's a card about reunion and joyous times. And that makes sense to me because I think Libra season is a lot about like coming back together after like us. Yeah, there was this summer of fun, but maybe you were away and you're returning to work and you're seeing, but there's also like that feeling of, sometimes it comes with that feeling of obligation as socializing as an obligation. Maybe extroverts don't understand, but us introverts understand that feeling. And I think if you do let that let this be a permission slip to say, I can't do all of the things on my social calendar. I'll lose my mind, and I'm just gonna pick and choose the things that'll work. And if it comes to the moment, I mean, literally, a friend just canceled on me, and I was like, cool, no worries. Like, it's all good. Like, do you listen to yourself? If that's what this is all about, following your own inner guidance system. And don't let anybody, especially society, pressure you. As much as possible, we're all unlearning and relearning. But yeah, I think that's a big message, is to just not letting the societal pressures make your decision. Let your decisions be intuitively led as much as you can. And just keep practicing. That's all I've got. I hope that you found this helpful. I'm really excited to keep doing it. And so if you did find this helpful, or you related to it in any way, please let me know some way. You could always send me an email at hello@thewyrdway.com. You could pass it on to somebody else. You can subscribe. Those are all really great ways to show me that this was something helpful to you. And so tune back in. I'll be back in 2 weeks. We'll be doing the other kind of episodes, which will be a deep dive into folklore and fairy tales and mythology. And I believe as of right now, we're going to look into the origins, the stories around 3 wishes, and where that came from, and how we can work with it now. So if that sounds cool, I'll see you again in 2 weeks. Otherwise, I'll see you next month for another tarot download. Have a beautiful October. You have been listening to The Wyrd Way. Recorded, edited, and produced by Sharon Ruedeman and Video Magic.